His Excellency, Mr. Esteban Lasso Hernandez, Vice President of the Republic of Cuba. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Señora Presidente,
Madam President,
distinguidos jefes de Estado,
distinguished heads of state and government,
y otros jefes de delegación,
and other heads of delegations, distinguished delegates and guests.
permítanme, ante todo, expresar mi total
May I at the outset express my full support
aquí ayer
for the statement made here yesterday
de la República
by the President
Bolivariana de Venezuela,
of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela,
Hugo Chávez Frías,
Comrade Hugo Chavez Fria,
apenas unas horas por el presidente del
and
Estado
what was said only hours ago by the multinational Bolivarian Republic, Mr. Evo Morales, Aima,
el sentir
who both conveyed the feeling of all the member countries of ALBA with respect to climate change, its true causes and possible solutions. I would also like to associate myself with the denunciation and protest at the lack of transparency and the absence of or the existence of parallel negotiation texts. Apparently tomorrow there will be a meeting with a list of speakers which is limited and which has been chosen in an undemocratic manner. We note with concern the exclusion of non-governmental organizations from this hall and the clear repressive measures used against demonstrators. In the historic conference of Rio de Janeiro held in 1992, Comrade Fidel Castro stated, and I quote, "An important biological species is at risk of disappearance due to the accelerated and progressive destruction of its natural habitat, man. The main responsibility for the brutal destruction of the environment lies with consumer societies. The solution cannot be to put off the development of those who need it. If we want to save mankind from self-destruction, there needs to be better distribution of the wealth and the technology which exists on our planet, less luxury and less wastage in a few countries, so that there are fewer poor and less hunger in the majority of the earth. This continues to be the essence of the problem which Fidel flagged then. Less than 2 decades later, the average annual temperature continues to rise. The concentration of greenhouse gases are greater. We see shrinking of the Arctic ice cap, rising of sea levels, an increase in the frequency and intensity of hurricanes, an altering of the rainfall patterns. Hundreds of millions of hectares of forests have lost, the deserts have grown, some 30% of species will disappear. Many of these effects will be irreversible, and the international community, particularly the developing world, urgently needs to see implementation of steps which will enable it to adapt to climate change and receive the necessary financial support. As was stated in the Special Declaration on Climate Change adopted at the 8th Summit of Heads of State of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, which recently concluded in Havana, climate change is becoming the most serious and pressing problem facing humanity. But selfishness and the interests of developed countries in preserving an unjust and inequitable world order are preventing us from undertaking the changes which are being demanded by the present and future generations. Those who cause 76% of the emissions which have accumulated in the atmosphere must take full responsibility for the impact made by their economies and lifestyles based on squandering and unsustainable patterns of production and consumption, and which have affected the balance of our global climate. Serious national emission reduction commitments by these countries are required, not hypocritical solutions based on the alleged benefits of the market. The United States, whose emissions amount to a quarter of global emissions, must not continue holding the international community hostage to its domestic politics. Persisting in the efforts to uncouple the current legal regime on climate change as embodied in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Kyoto Protocol, in order to bring about a new and single agreement applicable to parties which are absolutely unequal in terms of the size of their contributions and their economic, financial, and technological capabilities, not only will continue to be a major obstacle to the efforts to have a final outcome, it will be an option that is politically and ethically unacceptable. We hope that there will be an agreement based on unrestricted respect for the principles agreed upon in the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, particularly the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, under which the developed countries take a leading role in accordance with their responsibilities and capabilities. Madam President, an agreement stemming from these negotiations cannot be alien to the realities of a profoundly unequal and excluding international economic order, which has left, may I resort to well-known data here, 2.5 billion people in poverty, 1.1 billion people without drinking water, 2.6 billion people without basic sanitation, more than 800 million people illiterate, more than 1 billion people hungry on the planet. A long-term agreement to combat climate change cannot entail additional restrictions on the development of third world countries. The colossal sums found for the bailout of companies and bankrupt banks and the billions of dollars invested every year in weapons show that the financial resources are there. What is needed is the political will to give them a more rational, humane, and sustainable use, and to counter the disaster which otherwise lies in store for us. I'd conclude by sharing Fidel's remarks once again on that occasion in 12th of June 1992. Let selfishness and hegemonism cease, as well as callousness, recklessness, and deceit. Tomorrow, it will be too late to do what should have been done a long time ago. Thank you very much.